Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من حمزه ونفخه ونفثه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So, several weeks ago, I had done Surah Rahman, and I did it over 3 presentations. So one surah, and we looked at it a little bit differently than what we normally see by way of conversation about that surah. So one surah taking about 3 presentations. Then in the last several weeks, we've also seen Brother Mamdou giving these shorter surahs of the last surah, or last juz of the Quran. And more recently, you may have noticed that he is able to cover 3 short surahs in one presentation. Going further back, as you recall, Brother Shehzado, on occasion, has taken several weeks, indeed a few months, when he started on the Surah Fatiha. So the point I'm trying to make is that this divine writ, this text, this Quran, has the depth, and it's up to you to choose what depth do you wish to go to. And you can take all those time frames, and it's still quite limitless. But in order to go through those depths, you still have to go and say to yourself that you have to understand it in order to go to any level of depth. This is why I keep on putting this exhibit again and again and again, because you have to be reflective. If you're not reflective, it will not talk to you. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, simply out of exasperation, if you will, or rhetorically, has said that will they not then try to understand this Quran? It is imperative that we do that. So now, having taken several weeks for one, or 3 weeks for another surah, or 3 surahs taken care of in one talk, you can even go further, compress it, and you can take several ayats and get a whole lot out of it. Okay. So today I will try to demonstrate by way of a few ayats from separate areas as to how a brief ayat or two can give you a message, provided the proviso always will be this exhibit. If you wish to reflect, the ayat will talk to you. If you wish to just read it without understanding it, you may get the ajr because you have read the Quran, but it will do nothing to you other than giving you momentary satisfaction spiritually, but it will not talk to you. And by the way, the fact that it is in Arabic, we keep on saying it's in Arabic, and I, as a non-Arabic speaking individual, have reflected upon it a whole lot. If you think back, the other 2 big religions, Christianity and Judaism, their books were not in English. Their books were not in the languages that people today know and understand. They're still following those books, aren't they? So there is an effort involved. In our case, we said we are not going to change this Quran. We're not going to change a word of it. And therefore, for us, it's imperative that we take that original language in that book and try to understand to the extent we can. So there are 5, I wouldn't call them topics, 5 illustrations here. The first one is, all such need have no fear, and neither shall they grieve. The second one is 6 injunctions given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on you shall not, and 1 injunction on you shall. I call it injunction. One can also call it imperatives, because when you read it, it is an imperative coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third one I'm referring to are 2 phrases which are in one ayat. First one is Kitab al-Mubini, and the second one is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. The fourth one is associating entities with Allah, which we all are aware of, we call it shirk. And the final one, and my favorite in the sense that I really, really believe this is an extremely important aspect that is highlighted by the Quran. uh, in various places. The overweening, by overweening, I mean excessive, in other words, all-consuming arrogance of man. Below these, I have pointed out several illustrative ayat. If you were just to add these up, they only amount to about 15 ayat, not much, and most of them are quite brief. So first one, all such need have no fear and neither shall they grieve. We all know this phrase, don't we? La khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. It appears quite a few times in the Quran, but think about it a little bit. And then let's move on to that. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, in ayat 62, 112, 262, 274, 277, this particular phrase occurs. There's also one other ayat in this surah that I'll refer to later on, but only later. Allah promises this, all such need have no fear and neither shall they grieve. The word such, I have deliberately put it here. It is a correct word to be used. And the reason I'm putting it here is as follows. If you go to the next one. So anyway, these are the various ayats in which this particular verse appears. Segment appears. So for example, in ayat 62 of Surah Al-Baqarah, all who believe in Allah and the last day and do righteous deeds shall have their reward with their sustainer, and no fear need they have, and neither shall they grieve. Now, the word such I have used is because 62, this is not all of 62. There is another segment just before it, which I have not included in here, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Christians and Jews as well. And then he on to say again, O you believers, O believers, all who believe in Allah. And here, since I didn't mention them, so such, in the topic, all such need have, means this such includes believers of all types, Christian, Jewish, and us, ultimately the Muslims. So this ayat tells you, all who believe in Allah and the last day and do righteous deeds shall have their reward with their sustainer, and no fear need they have, and neither shall they grieve. This particular passage lays down one of the fundamental doctrines of Islam. Okay. We listen to it, we read it, it just passes by. Think about it. One of the fundamental doctrines of Islam is laid in this particular part of Ayat 62 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Now, with a breadth of vision that's unparalleled in any other religious faith, the idea of salvation for a human being is here made conditional upon only three elements: belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, belief in the day of judgment, and righteous action in life, in today's life, in the life on this earth. This is in glaring contrast to the false Jewish belief that their descent from Abraham, children of Israel, entitles them to be regarded as Allah's chosen people. In ayat 112 of this surah, for instance, according to Quran, salvation is not reserved for any particular denomination, but is open to everyone who consciously realizes the oneness of Allah, surrenders himself to his will, and by living righteously gives practical effect to this spiritual attitude. Okay. It is not exclusive to Muslims. It is not exclusive to Christians. It is not exclusive to Jews. It is exclusive to all those who believe what? The ones that we put up there. That they believe in Allah, whatever the name by which they call, they believe in the last day, and they do righteous deeds. All such people need have no fear, and neither shall they grieve. Okay, so as we saw in 62 and 112, it laid down one of the fundamental doctrines of Islam. Then in ayat 262, 274, 277, by way of internal relationships. I introduced this concept to you when going through Surah Ar-Rahman, which is extremely important, of course, in understanding the Quran. You have to go back because it's a dynamic text. So you have to back and forth to get some further elaboration, which is somewhere else in the Quran, in order to elucidate further the idea that is presented in the context where you are at that moment. So by way of internal relationship, the Quran provides an elaboration on righteous deeds. The righteous deeds that was shown in passage of 62 and 112, here there is an elaboration on righteous deeds by bringing in the elements of one, constancy in prayer, and two, spending in the way of Allah, as among the righteous actions that promise man that they need have no fear and neither shall they grieve. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduced that fundamental doctrine in 62, in which he mentioned righteous deeds. He chooses to then show you two of those righteous deeds here: constant prayers and spending in the way of Allah. So how does he do that in 62, 262, 274, 277? They who spend their possessions for the sake of Allah and do not thereby negate their spending by stressing their own benevolence and hurting the feelings of the needy, they shall have their reward with their sustainer, and no fear need they have, and neither shall they grieve. And then again, within these three ayats, verily those who have attained to faith and do good works and are constant in prayer and dispense charity, they shall have their reward with their sustainer, and no fear need they have, and neither shall they grieve. So, those who believe in the oneness of Allah, believe in the justice of Allah on Judgment Day, do good works, including dispensing charity, and are constant in their prayers, these are the people who shall have no fear and neither shall they grieve. Okay? Very simple ayats, very clear. There is absolute clarity in these ayats, and here it is. You take it and you can go forward with it. Now, fear and grief, these are the descriptions I've given for things that you may worry about. Various tafasirs show that this fear and this grief pertains to the fear and grief we may have on Judgment Day. Another explanation is that no, the fear is for that which is to come in future, whether it's in future in this life or future on Judgment Day. And fear and grief is that for that which is past. Okay. You wish to look at it this way or that way, it's up to you. Fear and grief can also be, for example, take a parent. A parent remains afraid that something will happen to his or her child, a genuine human fear. A parent will grieve if his or her child passes away. It's a genuine grief. Fear of that sort and grief of that sort are part of our nature. It's in our fitra, if you will. However, I would like to look at it not discounting this, but a little bit broader in the sense that if I look at myself, I have realized time and again that most of my fear was ungrounded. In other words, most of us end up fearing about things that never transpire. We use a lot of our emotional and spiritual energy being afraid of this, afraid of that, and not harking back to our belief in the Zat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that our succor, our help comes from that source, and we keep on fearing about these things. It is this fear also that is being incorporated in this fear. Grief as well, same thing. if you're going to grieve about the past and continue to grieve about past, there is an element of living in the present, as Brother Shahzado has been elucidating on yesterday and the last week also. You have to remind yourself that this is the present that I'm living in. My past is past. I'm living in the present while being aware of the future. The grief, it was from him, it came, and it has returned to him, whether it is your child or whether it's any tragedy. Everything returns back to it anyways. So broaden your mind when you say what fear and what grief. Again, if you were to further broaden it, this is a sort of sense of feeling. A fear and grief, they occupy a lot of our time. This particular ayat or this particular subject is saying, if you do this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you do this, believe in me and me alone, believe in the just justice I will give to you on Judgment Day, do good deeds, particularly constant prayers, and spend of what I have given you, you will have no fear or grief or any of that in you, and you should not. So it should be again like a sirat mustaqim. You never reach it, you're just walking. And we are walking while doing these things, and these fear and these griefs will go away. I have known people in my own family where the child has died, and the parent, when people come to him, absolutely at peace. It was from him, it has gone back to him. And you marvel at this, absolutely marvel at this. This is a point of content that this individual has gotten to, where there is no fear and there is no grief and there is total acceptance. Now, the ayat that I didn't refer to here is ayat number 39. In that ayat in Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this guidance, take this guidance, and you shall have no fear and no grief. What is he referring to? He has broadened it further. This divine writ, this text, this Quran is your guidance. If you take this guidance in the spirit in which it has been sent to us, you shall have no grief, you shall have no fear. This is Allah's promise. This is not the words that I'm speaking in Meda. This is Allah's promise in these ayat. We have to take these ayat the way they are, and we have to reflect upon them. Unless you reflect upon them, all this reading in Arabic, which you will not understand, is not going to do much. Even when you read the translation, you have to stop and reflect upon it, and it will speak to you. I will quickly read this poem. Okay? It's been generated by a chatbot. I gave it a very comprehensive request vis-a-vis this topic that I just spent. And I'm not saying this, I'm just telling you because this powerful transportation is taking place as we speak. Every day you don't dwell into it, you're losing out. Every single day there is so much advancement going on in it that you can partake of by using that iPhone that you have, and it will do wonders for you if you have not spent time with the Quran, the understanding of the introduction of all. None of it takes away from the Quran per se, but look what it can do. I spoke for the last 15 minutes on this first topic. I will not take much time in the other ones. Look what this does. And I told him about what I just told you. In unity they stand those who bow to Allah's might, believing they in Allah's oneness bright, trusting in His justice, pure and true on the day when all renews, Judgment Day. Their hands extend in charity's grace, good deeds marking their every pace. In constant prayer they bow and they rise, their faith reaching toward the skies. These souls, steadfast, patient, steadfast in their way, shall know no fear on Judgment Day. No grief shall touch their peaceful heart, From divine mercy they shall never part. For in their faith and their actions pure deeds, they have found a shelter strong and sure. Walking the path that Allah has blessed, their hearts and their souls shall find their rest. Observe that this poem, generated in Claude chatbot called Claude from Anthropic, upon a comprehensive request, it's as good as you put in the request, preserves the key concepts of belief in Allah's oneness, you will see it, Tawheed, trust in Allah's justice, the importance of good deeds and charity, the significance of regular prayer, the reward of freedom from fear and grief. This is the transformation that is taking place today. We can use it to our benefit. If you will read books on AI, it will tell you this particular knowledge, wisdom that has been gained by sheer reflection, sheer effort by humankind can ultimately, because Allah Ta'ala has given us the choice to perform good or to perform evil, has the capability and will have the capability all along to create as much evil as you think it will do good. I am hoping, and let us all hope, that it does good rather than evil. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in our fitrat the choice. He has said, you can go as far as you want to in gaining wisdom. Through working hard, through effort, gain it. Knowledge, there is essentially no limit to it, but know that I'm the only one who's all-knowing. But as far as you as a human being, you want to go as far as you can in acquiring knowledge, and then choose how you want to use the knowledge. This transformation that is happening as we live is there for us. Let us try to use it in a positive manner. And let us try to use it in trying to understand, get the knowledge in a faster fashion, understand what our book says to us. Okay? If you do this and go back to the guidance, you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at the brief and succinct manner. Look at Surah Ar-Rahman, how succinct the messages were in it, so tightly compressed, so beautifully done. 6 injunctions on you shall not and 1 injunction on you shall. This is the second topic. Al-Hujurat, Surah 49, Ayat 11. Three of these injunctions are shown here. O you who have attained to faith, no man shall mock, ridicule other men. It may well be that those whom they ridicule are better than themselves. And no woman shall mock other woman. It may well be that those whom they mock, those women, are better than themselves. And neither shall you defame, speak ill of one another, nor insult one another by disgraceful names. Evil is all the attribution of the mischief maker after one has attained to faith. And they who become guilty thereof and do not repent, it is they who are the evildoers. These are 3 injunctions on what you shall not. Then in 12, ayat 12, O you who have attained to faith, avoid most guesswork about one another. For behold, some of such guesswork is in itself a sin. And do not spy upon one another. And neither allow yourselves to speak ill of one another behind your backs. 6 injunctions of you shall not. How much more succinct and yet comprehensive do you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be in order for you to maintain good relations with each other, upon which our daily life and the whole life rests? Look at the beauty of these succinctness, the comprehensiveness in such a tight fashion. And then what does it say? It ends up after these 6 injunctions and gives you a simile. Would any of you like to eat the flesh of your dead brother? No, you would absolutely hate it. When you read this and you get this gut feel of hate in it, think about those 6 things that you do. All these 6 things I do, all these things we do, look at it, how it ends up by doing that. Following these 6 injunctions, you see, the book is about descriptions of our ills, our fears, and prescriptions. Descriptions and prescriptions. Descriptions given about fear and grief, prescriptions given about those 5 tenets in the previous topic that we talked about. Following these 6 injunctions from Allah about what men and women should not do, verse 12 of Hujarat concludes with the following injunction about what they should do. Be conscious of Allah. How can he get more succinct and more powerful than that? Conscious of Allah, taqwa. Okay? Awareness of the Zat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your time, in your asr, in the passage of your time, moment to moment. I dwelt upon it when I did Surah Asr. By time, bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala squarely in the middle of your time. What do I mean by time? Our time on this life, in this life. If you are aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Zat, moment to moment, you shall have no fear, no grief of the first topic. You shall not conduct these 6 injunctions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, do not do. And then he's giving you the prescription. Be conscious of Allah. Verily, Allah is an acceptor of repentance and a dispenser of grace. He gives you this, you shall do this, be conscious of Allah, and then he even gives you here, repent about those 6 things, and I will dispense my grace to you. Tawwabur Rahimun. How can any human being compose this? How can any human being compose this? The 6 injunctions of you will not, if you do follow these injunctions, you have the best relationship with human beings around you. And then he gives you the prescription. And then he says, even if you've done this, even if you forget and keep doing some of these, and you keep on repenting, I am Tawwabur Rahim. Our illnesses and our prescriptions are all here for us to look at and understand and take us. So, in brief, 6 injunctions of thou shalt not. Do not mock, do not defame, do not insult, do not conjecture about, do not spy upon, and do not speak ill of one another behind each other's backs. 1 injunction, thou shalt be conscious of Allah ever so. The Quran comes in 2 straightforward ayat, 11 and 12 in Hujarat, and jolts the reader with 6 profound injunctions, indeed commandments of what is not to be done, and ends with the oft-repeated injunction of what should be done. It is remarkable that this last injunction of what an individual should do, if it is taken up, if you take and put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Zat squarely in the middle of your time on this earth, if you're aware of his Zat moment to moment, if taken up, it makes avoiding the first injunctions enormously that much easier, doesn't it? Subhanallah. Number 3, Kitab al-Mubini, in the translation of this, I put in, we'll talk about it, a revelation. Here, kitab is being translated as a revelation, but you can use it as kitab also, and you all know what we mean by kitab, a divine writ, this text, this Quran. A revelation that is clear in itself, and it clearly shows the truth. Again, a revelation clear in itself and clearly showing the truth. And لَأَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ is so that you might encompass it, so that you might get it with your reason. What it is, revelation, kitab, whether it's 1 ayat, whether it's the whole of Quran. So Surah Yousuf, 1 and 2, Alif Lam Ra, these are the messages of revelation, clear in itself and clearly showing the truth. Kitab al-Mubini, behold, we have bestowed it, Al-Kitab, from on high, as a discourse in the Arabic tongue, so that you might encompass it with your reason. Allakum ta'qilun. both these phrases coming in these 1 and 2. In this ayat 12:1, the noun mubin denotes the attribute of another noun kitab. Kitab al-mubin, if you will call it adjective. It's an attribute. What kind of kitab? Kitab mubin, the attribute, which it qualifies. An adjective qualifies a noun. Mubin here qualifies kitab. And it says more about this kitab. And what is it? It's an attribute. Mubin is an attribute for kitab. In English, Mubin is translated as clear and Kitab as book or revelation. So the phrase is translated as a clear book or clear revelation. Attribute of Quran, it's clear. But in this ayat, the word Mubin may also denote the revelation's function. See, a phrase can also show you the function of that noun. So here, the word Mubin may also denote the Kitab's function. In English, the phrase would be translated as making clear something that is making clear something. More comprehensively, here in the Quran, it makes making clear what? The truth. So which of these to opt for depends on which of these two meanings is dictated by the context. In the consensus of authoritative opinion, both these meanings are comprised in this phrase, Kitab al-Mubini, insofar as Mubin is concerned. Conceptually, therefore, Muhammad Asad has rendered this compound phrase, Kitab al-Mubini, quite appropriately as a revelation, a book that is clear in itself, and it clearly shows the truth. You see the comprehensiveness? Both the attribute and the function of the word, the adjective, if you will, comes in together, and it opens your mind to what this kitab is. It says it's Kitab al-Mubini. Not only is it clear, but it clarifies the truth. Now, as for the expression which is highlighted in the surah above, so that you might encompass with your reason, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, Zamakhshari renders it in the context of the verse 12:2 as shown above, so that you might encompass it with your reason. The surah says, that the ayat says, these are the messages of a revelation that is clear in itself and clearly showing the truth, so that you might encompass it with your reason, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Why? From on high, as a discourse in the Arabic tongue, as a discourse in Aramaic, as a discourse in Hebrew, as a discourse in Arabic. Living in modern times, it is imperative upon ourselves to pick that tongue, to pick that language, to understand it, and then the ayat says, so that you might encompass this book with your reason, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's most significant blessings upon all, with reason. Although in the first sentence, the words of 12:2 were addressed to Arabian contemporaries of the Prophet, 1 and 2 apply to all people, whatever their origin, who understand the Arabic language. They are meant to impress upon everyone who listens to or reads the Quran that its appeal is directed primarily to man's reason, and that feeling alone can never provide a sufficient basis for faith. Put alternatively, just the feeling will not strengthen the faith. You will have this feeling. You read the Quran in Arabic. I mean, this young man, I've been listening to him for the last 6-7 years, that recited this morning's Fajr. You know, beautiful recitation. But look, the second part of Surah Amma, Naba, that he recited. If you understood it, when it ends, Ya laytani kuntu turaba. If you know the essence of that phrase, you cannot help but the tears come to your eyes or swell up to your eyes. I experienced that because I was fortunate enough to have been guided to see and to feel what is that, alas, how the person who has been ill in this world, who is ill-spoken, He is so sinful that at that day of Judgment Day, he says, I wish I was just dust. Okay. Ya laytani kuntu turaba. His recitation moves me. I feel it. But when I understand what he said, it's a different thing altogether. The reasoning, the intellect, and the spiritual, the feeling, both should go together. Otherwise, look at the loss we have. We remain in a state of loss throughout our life. Khusran, khusran. And so the Quran is mubin in that it denotes both the attribute and the function. That is, the Quranic revelation is clear, it has clarity, and it makes clear the truth, provided the human beings use their Allah-given skill of reason to grasp that reality. Associating entities with Allah. Shirk. Partial of ayat 22 in Surah Baqarah. Do not give Allah any equals. Very simple, very straightforward, 5, 6 words. Equals is andadun in Arabic. Another way of this particular phrase, do not then claim that there is any power that could rival Allah. Okay. If you want to have a better combination of words to say the same things, do not then claim that there is any power that could rival Allah. The term andadan here pertains to any object of adoration to which some or all of Allah's qualities are ascribed, whether it is conceived as a divine deity in its own right, or a saint supposedly possessing divine or semi-divine powers. Meanwhile, in another ayat, 24 of the same surah, idols are translated as stone, hijarata. Here, the lifelessness of stone symbolizes the powerlessness and the inefficacy of all objects of worship to which men turn instead of Allah. Whether it is conceived as a divine deity in its own right, or saint, or stones, powerlessness and the inefficacy of all objects of worship to which men turn instead of Allah. Look at our daily lives, and we'll talk about it in the next couple of minutes. Think about your life and life around you and see how we continue to be impressed by and fall into this trap. The powerlessness and inefficacy of all objects of worship, and we keep on, we meaning we people, we keep on, we Muslim, turning instead of Allah. In Surah Al-An'am 22, 23, and elsewhere, the term shuraka, plural of sharik, is used in Quran with reference to beliefs. Shuraka denotes real or imaginary beings or forces to whom one ascribes a share in Allah's divinity. Consequently, this concept and its utter condemnation in Islam relates not only to the worship of false deities, but also to the attribution of semi-divine qualities and powers to saints, as well as to abstract notions like wealth, social status, power, nationality, etc., to which men so often ascribe an objective influence on human destinies. If I am wealthy, then. If I have a high social power status, then. If I have power, then. If I am Israeli, then. My destinies are all a function of these, or one of these, or all of these. Shuraka also pertains to persons with such beliefs as ascribing divinity or divinity-like qualities to beings or forces other than Allah. Now, this is another type, very, very prevalent. To persons with such beliefs as ascribing of divinity or divinity-like qualities to beings or forces other than Allah, while at the same time not subjectively visualizing denial of Allah's oneness. They do not deny Allah's oneness, but they still ascribe divinity or divinity-like qualities to beings or forces other than Allah. Sounds familiar? For instance, the mystical dogma of Trinity, which in the Christian view does not conflict with the principle of one God, oneness, inasmuch as it is supposed to express a threefold aspect of one deity. Yeah, there is one deity, but we have three aspects of it. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Another example, the attribution of divine or semi-divine qualities to saints or supposed mediators between man and Allah. All such beliefs are emphatically rejected in the Quran. Finally, Ayat 35 of Surah Al-Anfal asserts, and their prayers before the temple are nothing but whistling and clapping of hands. This whistling and clapping of hands, I can conjure up that picture, of course, naked men and women going around the Kaaba, whistling and clapping hands. Just imagine that picture, how repulsive and repugnant it sounds to us. Now take that simile of whistling and clapping of hands. Take away from that particular scene that I just described and think of it in terms of generality, in terms of the English language. When you whistling and clapping of hands, it sounds so silly. It has absolutely no sense. It speaks of silliness par excellence, okay? This was a ritual practiced by pre-Islamic Arabs, as you all know. However, it would appear that the underlying expression, whistling and clapping of hands, is used metaphorically to denote the spiritual emptiness of the rituals, religious rituals of people who are desirous of attributing a quasi-divine efficacy to all manners of circumstantial forces such as wealth, power, social status, luck, and even indeed those 300 and some idols inside of Kaaba, the stones. This is the state of affairs today also. We are giving attributes of semi-divine qualities to my wealth, to my nationality, to my social status, how powerful I am. Does Allah deny you wealth? No. You can go and get wealth. It is allowed. You can go and get power. It is allowed. You can move on in social status. It is allowed. What does it not allow? It says, yes, go for it, but then what? What do you do with it? And to what extent do you keep the limit of it in your understanding? Again, hark back to the same thing. Be aware of His presence moment to moment. In all things that we feel and we do, if we are aware of His existence. As you get more wealth, you say, Shukr Alhamdulillah. As you get power, you say, Shukr Alhamdulillah. Let me not forget that this power is to make a positive use of, to do something good in this world because I have power to do that. There is a difference, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unlike some of the religion, does not tell you not to go for any of these things. No. But to make it shuraka, no. And the last one, the overweening arrogance of man. As I said, this is the one that really disturbs me the most. The most excessive arrogance of man is exhibited in his belief that he is sufficient unto himself, that he is sufficient all by himself. So much so that in his most glaring show of arrogance, through and through, his sustainer, his Lord, Allah, remains totally absent. This curse, this arrogance, which eminent scholar Khalid Abul Fadl says at the end of it, arrogance is nothing but man's ego. Man's ego. You puff your chest up to such an extent that you are be all. Pharaoh is an example, classic example that appears in the Quran, which tells you what it is. The power gets into your head, the wealth gets to your head, the social status gets to your head, your nationality gets to your head, or even none of that, and you still show, because in a relative basis, you're a little bit higher than this one, and you just puffed up. And you get arrogant and you exhibit arrogance externally, internally, to everyone, and nowhere do you find the sign of where is Allah in all this. He's totally absent. This is the limit of arrogance. Remember, as a Muslim, if you show the elements of arrogance and you realize that during that he was absent, you know you have gone beyond the excess. Always remind. Why does he keep on saying, be conscious of me? Because arrogance, through all these attributes, wealth, social status, power, nationality, can get to your head so much that you're all encompassed with it, and he's absent. Note the 3 ayat of Surah Al-Alaq. These 3 ayats follow the very first 5 ayat that were revealed to the Prophet. Ayat 6, 7, and 8. No, indeed, man becomes grossly overweening and arrogant whenever he believes himself to be self-sufficient, independent of Allah, for behold, unto your sustainer all must return. Okay. The return of verse, Al-Raja, implies that ultimately everyone will inescapably be brought before Allah for judgment. It also implies that indeed everything that exists goes back to Allah as its source. Verses 6, 7, and 8, we all know these verses, thereby reject as absurd the arrogant idea that man could ever be self-sufficient and hence could ever be the master of his own fate. The master of your own fate? No. You're going to return. Everything goes back to the source. Unto your sustainer you return. And yet you become grossly overweening and arrogant, and you feel you are self-sufficient, you're independent of Allah. Furthermore, this passage 6 through 8 implies that all moral concepts, that is, all distinctions between good and evil, between right and wrong, are indissolubly linked with the concept of man's responsibility to a supreme power. In other words, without such a feeling of responsibility, call it fear of God as it were, call it taqwa, without such a feeling of responsibility, be it at a conscious level or at a subconscious level, the concept of morality as such loses all its meaning. All moral concepts are linked with the concept of man's responsibility to a supreme power, to whom you're going to return. Without this feeling, recognition of that, having a responsibility, the concept of morality just loses its meaning. If arrogance consumes us, we cannot be moral. We lose all sense of morality. Netanyahu, in doing what he has done in Iran and in Gaza and in the bank, on the Western Bank, through and through, arrogance shows through. There is no presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there. There is no presence. Okay. There is no morality. What moral character is he posing out there? Put differently, morality as such is meaningless without an acknowledgement of an associated sense of responsibility, that there is an accountability for all one's action to a supreme power to whom we all must return for our final and comprehensive judgment. Man's unbridled self-arrogance is an antithesis of this concept of being accountable to Allah, his sustainer. What do I mean by that? If you have a spectrum Man's self-arrogance is here, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is totally absent. And then there is this complete submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Zat. And here, that is all absent, okay? The exact opposite of the concept of Islam, taslim. Islam is taslim, a complete and comprehensive submission to the Zat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The complete absence of, the exact opposite of that, is man's unbridled self-arrogance. The exact opposite, antithesis of concept of being accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submission to his Zat, is self-arrogance. And this taslim is what Islam is all about. You take this Islam that I've written here with a small I and put a capital I on it, and then that's what the last khutbah says. Today I have given this particular submission to you and called it Islam, capital I Islam. But under small I Islam is submission, okay? But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out that this submission to my Zat, I am giving you a name to this religion, capital I. And what is this submission? It is a submission that has got arrogance that is totally absent. In you as a Muslim, if you have done this taslim, arrogance should not be there, okay? Think of it. Ego par excellence, okay? I'm finishing my talk here, but because this is a powerful subject of arrogance, okay, so what do you say? May He, Allah, protects us from this pernicious characteristic that is arrogance. These 6, I'm not going to go through because you will lose attention, and it has some grammar. And if Rafiq Bhai was here, he would have said, there he goes with the grammar, so I will not do that. On Tughyan, I have this page on Tughyan. I have another page on Taghut. I have third page on Allah's prohibition, injunction, La tadghaw, okay? Do not, here is his injunction, do not do tadghaw, okay? Tughyan, arrogance, Taghut, all that pertains to arrogance. La tadghaw, he says, prohibits, don't, okay? And I have shown you various instances of this concept of overweening arrogance brought about by the Quran are as follows. So there are these that are being shown, and there's finally there are these that being shown. If you choose to, very few people choose to go back to the presentations that the 3 of us give here, mostly. But if you choose to, you can go to this presentation and you can go through these, and I'm sure you'll get something more out of it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq for that.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت. اللهم بارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, grant them your mercy, make their graves garden from heaven, and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, we have our son Ma'raj, our daughter Aisha Wani, and many others. Oh Allah, grant to all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them and make them righteous. Oh Allah, grant us the power and the ability that we may be grateful for the favor that you have bestowed upon us and our parents, and that we may do righteous deeds that are pleasing to you. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we do it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we do it or we don't. Oh Allah, we ask you every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.